How will the All Blacks and the Springboks win this weekend? Now both of them got away with a win last week, and today's one on Rock and Roll. I'm not going to go as much into the teams, but just more discuss the approach that I think these teams should have and these coaches should have. So let's start with the All Blacks that won with the 1 point against England. And I think if England had a shot to actually win a game here on their tour here in New Zealand, that would have been the one that they felt got away. Marcus Smith was very poor with his goal kicking. Look, so was DMAC. But it was a close encounter and probably their best shot in my opinion. Looking at the All Blacks, you can see the team. The only change will be Finley Christie coming in for TJ Perenara. They had that horrific, accident or tackle which twisted his leg. It looked really, really bad on TV. And then Cortez Radima, that's on the bench, that might get his first run, which is the only two. Everyone else is exactly the same team. So I'm not really going to go into that much into the teams. What the teams you saw last week is the same teams that, Scott Robinson's going with. And for both coaches, even Rassie, I'll go more into the Springboks. Let's talk All Blacks first. But both coaches, a new year or a new start of a new era after the World Cup. New players they're all picking. New gameplay that they're all approaching. Obviously for Razor now after Foster, and then for Rassie Erasmus starting something totally new with Tony Brown and his new coaching, setup. So for both of them, I think it makes total sense that they stick to the same teams. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media, everyone saying, "Oh, it's terrible. They played terrible. They got to change the team. They got to change the team." That's not always the solution. You can't go change the team and expect a different result. Actually, you want to keep the same team, but start letting them play more towards what you envision them to play as. Now, I don't think what Robinson saw last week was what he's envisioning for this team. He got a lot of, even I felt it was a little bit disappointing to what we were expecting from him for his first game. But at the same time, you have to say, got the win, he got away with it. And at the same time, you have to feel you've got to give this guy a little bit of time here. We got to be fair and also say, it's a very different type of play to what the All Blacks used to play. Stuff like box kicking and kicking so much is a totally new way for All Blacks to approach the game, which is interesting. It's very different, where the Springboks are now starting to look at more of a wide game, spreading the ball, which is something they never used to do, used to focus more on their box kicks, where now the All Blacks are starting to look at more implementing that kind of box kicking game, and also obviously also moving the ball a lot on the field, but maybe in a little bit different types of structures of how they go about it. For me, if it comes to Robinson this week, Razor's really got to just get them to play a bit more direct. It was a lot of offloads in the tackles, but a lot of the times just passing the ball around, going from the one side of the field to the other, with not really breaking, the line enough for me, in my opinion. So I would probably expecting this week to make sure that this team starts playing a bit more direct, the forwards really being there for the clean outs and just driving forward through a few more phases, because I think just not enough of the direct type of play. It was very lateral for most of the games. A lot of cross kicks, making it more lateral, and a lot of up and unders, which a lot of the times the All Blacks lost the up and under. Now, the trick with up and unders, it's pointless using it if it's not contestable and you're not able to win it back. Now, you can see your win back rate. They'll be looking at all these statistics, and clearly it wasn't that successful last week. Some of the kicks worked well, for Savouris getting a 50-22, but a lot of the kicks being up and unders and not really contestable kicking. So they will be wanting to looking at the up and under kicking, and they want to be wanting to look at more direct type of play. I think it's two things that would be really important for this team to get right, because it's always the same thing. The forward sets the foundation for the back line to do what they want to do, spread the ball, run, all those kind of things. Now you could clearly see last week, the two centers being so quiet in that All Black team is because they didn't get good forward playing ball. Also, it's got to be said that DMAC, I'm sure, was spoken to, really had a good talking to him to look at not just his timing, his kicking, and to kind of just take control of the game. It was very interesting because DMAC from the bench, not being the number one fly-off, has been very solid usually when he comes on. But he looked a little bit rattled. He just didn't look his normal self in that game last week. But you can clearly see, I've seen this, Rassie do this as well for the Springboks. Razor sticking to his guns and saying, I'm staying with this. He's not sticking Bowden Barrett in there and saying, I'm going to switch them around because I'm now having doubts with DMAC. He's still putting his money on DMAC. So sometimes by putting that confidence in players, we see the same with Mani Libbok for the Springboks. Constantly putting that confidence in the players. Libbok, when he just came onto the scene for the Springboks, was also not great. I do think DMAC in certain ways could even be better than Libbok, but they similar type, running type fly-offs. But also a little bit inconsistent in some of the stuff that they do. Sometimes a little bit of irrational play. But as you develop that player more under pressure, from kickoff, starting the first player to start the game and control the game, the more they will develop. So I believe DMAC will develop as time goes. If he'll ever be a Muhunga, I don't know, but he's a different type player in many ways. But he's got to start controlling the game with the kicking, creating a bit more space for him in depth to make good, sound decisions and not irrational decisions sometimes. I mean, that cross kick he gave was phenomenal. I just feel that sometimes, he's got to make that decision if it's more territorial game for the kicking to the corners, or does he run the forwards, does he run the backs, because he can be a bit predictable to always just expect him to want to run. So keeping the guys guessing, Another thing that I think the All Blacks have to look at is there was a lot of indecisiveness on the field. So they would want to go left on the field, and the next thing you'll just see one of the players kind of like change direction and then want to go to the right. That indecisiveness showed in the game, and the defense could feel that because of the fact of the indecisiveness. Your opposition can definitely start picking it up, and that catches you out. So also something that they will have to look at. Another thing, obviously, then looking at the team of England. I don't know what team they're going to put up. England, the Northern Hemisphere, the touring teams seem to be keeping their cards close to their chest just before the game and now announcing their teams. I mean, England for me did exceptionally well. They improving definitely from last year. There's huge improvements. Very, very much to me. A lot of stuff that they've kind of stolen from other teams. You have to say, playing a lot like old Springbok rugby from 2019 onwards. Now playing a lot of also the kicking type game. But they've become very, very good at the breakdowns. Really, really good at breakdowns. So much better. Competitive. Their scrums are looking pretty good. And what they are really, really starting to just improve every week, every time I see them play, is that rush defense or that press defense, which is a very risk-reward type of play. And, I've seen Australia and the All Blacks expose a team which was the Springboks, that is still in the early stages of their development of that press defense, because if you can expose it while they're still working out their structures, you can really little kicks through, just trying to break a tackle and then having everyone being offside. But kicks is very efficient in that manner, seeing space behind the rush defense. And I just got a feeling this week, Robinson would have had his guys really study the tapes and the footage and kind of, I think they're going to expose the rush defense a lot more from England. I just don't think England can for me produce the same result as what they did last week in Dunedin. I think in Auckland we will this time around see by the second half the All Blacks start taking control of this game. I'm going to go with the All Blacks winning it by 9. And that's very, for me, it should be more, man. I think this All Black team's got all the abilities to win these games quite far at home. But a lot of indecisiveness, issues with cohesion, a new team. And just keep in mind, England, Ireland, both these teams have played right through a Six Nations, which the Springboks and the All Blacks haven't had. You know, they've been all over in Japan and all over the world. Maybe not as much with the All Blacks not allowing them all in. But they've come back and made sure they're in time, like Adi Savia. They did play, but played back here, got back in time. The fact is, the team is pretty... It's not fully cohesive yet. But as they now start, with the pressures of just the fans, I think the All Blacks will turn up this week and it'll be a better performance. What I also would like to see from the All Blacks is that Stephen Perofeta was brilliant under the high ball last week. I thought he was really good playing the high balls. I almost felt he had a better game to me than Bodie Barrett. That they're going to have to be solid in the back again with the up and unders. But otherwise, I do feel that, you know, it's not like that I am discrediting England, causing an upset. Yeah, I just think if there was a shot, it was last week, because I don't see the All Blacks from here not improving. And they won by 1 point. And I think the All Blacks have got much more improvement to show now than what England would be able to show from last week's game to this game. England, we kind of know it's going to be something very similar we'll be expecting. Where I think now with the All Blacks, they can go from 1 week to the next with huge improvements, because all the talent's there, the coaching staff is there, you know, the idea of how they want to play is there. It's now just getting used to it and everyone getting the buy-in. And I think being a bit more directional and playing with purpose going forward. So for me, that's what I would say with the All Blacks. Then coming to the Springboks, guys. For me with the Springboks, interesting. I've heard so many reviews. I heard for the first time, you know, guys like on the breakdown, you had guys like JR and Goldie praising the Springboks for playing running rugby, because it's been something they've been complaining about forever. Kind of exposing, playing those wide channels. But then watching a lot of the South African guys, Keo and Zels and some other podcasts, feeling totally the opposite, saying, no, this is not Springbok DNA. We can't play like this if we're going to be playing the All Blacks. And I found it very interesting, because they were like, yeah, that's part of the reason why they missed so many tackles at the end. I could warrant some of the argument, but some of the argument I also had to say, no, it's not. So some of those arguments that I'll just want to go over is the guys were saying, no, you know, they can't be playing this running type rugby because that's just not Springbok DNA. But the fact is, the Springboks playing this, starting with it straight away this year, and you've got to take off your hat to Rassie Erasmus, saying to Brown, let's start running it. Let's start playing more of that. You know, less of the kicking, less of the forward driving. There was some of that. It's not gone. But more moving the ball through the hands and complimenting guys like Jesse Creel getting a lot of space, but a lot of people feeling, oh, I want to see more crash balls from Dilly Lindy and all those guys. The old way of playing. They feel they're wasting all these forwards. But at the same time now, you go ask yourself, Ireland's number 2 in the world, Springboks number 1 at the moment, New Zealand 3. Ireland was beaten with this type of running game. If the Springboks week on week stick to this, and this is what I like about Rassie Erasmus, I don't think he's going to veer from his approach to play running rugby. I think he's going to go out this week, do exactly what he was doing last week, and I think it's going to come off better this week. I just have a feeling it's going to come off better. I do think Ireland will be more prepared for it, because they were, you know, really caught by the whole thing. They were expecting, you know, the normal Springbok type rugby. Suddenly they're moving the ball out to the wide channels. But for me, very positive to see as a Springbok supporter. Lovely rugby. They've got so much depth and players in the squad from the Springboks that if they can start really using that backline, I mean, the forwards will always be dominant players. There will always be pride in the scrums. That will never change for the Springboks. So the forward type play will always be there. But now getting these backline players also more involved and kind of playing some running rugby, it's such a good mix. And the more they're going to develop that, the more. You heard that on the breakdown. They said the Springboks could be a formidable force in the future to be reckoned with if they get this balance right. I've got to tell you, I don't think that will be the case by the Rugby Championship this year. I still think it's going to be a great, great battle between these two teams. But I've got to tell you, I think it's going to be between these two teams because Australia is looking better. Argentina is looking dismal. So it's really going to be these two teams, the All Blacks and the Springboks come Rugby Championship. We're all excited for that. But let's look at this now. Ireland playing the Springboks. What do we think is going to happen this weekend? Well, look, I mean, before I say that, I've got to say, just coming back to the point is, the other argument was that because the Springboks are playing this wider channel type of play, their defensive structures is a bit also in disarray. And I can understand that to a sense because they were so used to defending a certain way with the more kind of like a traditional way their team would line up on the field, where now it could be a bit disjointed. But saying, I hear some of these pundits or podcasters say, they'll never be able to get this right. I don't agree with that because All Blacks have played expansive rugby for all these years, but they've had some of the best defense structures. It's just getting used to new defense structures. You just got to give these players a chance, man. Same for the All Blacks as the Springboks. Give them time to learn the new ways of the new coaches. But I do still believe the Springboks can have good defensive structures and play a expansive game and still be good with the forwards. Where some feel now that they're going to play more expansive, their defense structures won't be as good. I do feel that can still both be achieved. We've seen the All Blacks do it. We've seen Ireland do it. How good's Ireland in the defense structures, and look how they can move the ball around. So I don't totally agree there. I do believe that the Springboks can get it all right over time. So do I believe the All Blacks can also with their game plan. So looking at this weekend, I mean, I still feel, Ireland's just a little bit light for me in players, There's just, they're really feeling that halfback fly off, the Sexton and the Gibson Park not being there. I can see, and then Hugo Kekinen at the back. They're missing these players. You can really see it. I think Bundiake and James Lowe is so important at the moment for that Irish team because they kind of are they are the rocks there in that back line. And some of the stuff that James Lowe did last week against the Springboks was phenomenal. Some of it wasn't great, but it's because he was put under a tremendous amount of pressure. As for the forwards of Ireland, great starting lineup forwards. But you have to say, when the Springboks bring up that bomb squad second half against the reserves that come up not all at once for Ireland usually because they get a lot of injuries, you have to feel that Ireland just will not be able to keep up for the 80 minutes for me in the second game. They've already been knocked up a bit. There's a few guys already injured. For them to go back into this second game and go win it will be a phenomenal feat. If they get this right, I mean, then, they can go back to their bragging rights. Springboks will stay the chance, but then they can say, oh, look, we played you all square in South Africa 1-1. Because the Springboks will feel we won you now, we've beaten you now, we've proven that we are the champs. But it all changes again if Ireland wins this one. Then we back to square one, and those arguments will keep going on in the press. But if the Springboks want to really, seal this up and put a ribbon on it and say, we have made our point to Ireland, they will go win this week, and they will have to win in Durban on King's Park. It's a bit more humid, so not always as such a high scoring game, but I still think it kind of suits the Springboks in many ways, even though their new game plan is running. If Andre Pollard is on song, which he wasn't last week, and he starts putting some more of his kicks through, be a bit more involved in the game because he was a little bit off, it could be a totally different game. I'm going to go with the Springboks winning by 11 points. I just really feel that this second game, I think the Springboks will improve a lot because they're also playing with this new expansive type rugby, but I think the forwards will also get more involved this week, and I just think it's going to be a bit of a better game. Their kicking will be more contestable as well because they had more contestable kicking than I felt the All Blacks had, but a lot less, not as much as usual, but I do think their kicking that they'll put through, they will be more contestable on it, although it's really minimal at the moment because they're trying to play the expansive type running rugby. I really just feel that, the Springboks, just with the depth they've got there and the team that they're putting on the field right now, you have to feel that compared to what Ireland's got, they did really, really well to come that close in that first game and to really pull that game back. I'm sure the Springboks will go look at the footage and say, we're not going to be conceding 2 tries again. Our defense structures have got to be better this week. And if they get their defense structures right, if you look at last week, 2 easy tries that was conceded because of poor defense. If that didn't happen, that was a convincing win for the Springboks. Really, really, if you think about it, the All Blacks should be beating England at home. The Springboks should be beating Ireland at home. And I think sometimes it's being overhyped by the media. And it's just because it's new coaches and it's new styles. But these teams really should be putting it to bed and beating both of these teams. I think both are going to come down this week and do it. I'm really excited for both games. I do think I'm still excited for both coaches. I still have faith in both coaches that you're going to have to give them time. If you go look at someone like Razor Robertson, when Rassie Erasmus just came into the Springbok mix, he lost a lot of games, some more major games as well, and everyone was questioning him. Eventually he was playing players out of position and still people were questioning him. I questioned him a lot about stuff. But with time, you started learning, okay, this guy comes with a plan. And that's why he's sitting after 8 years with the depth that he's got, because he plays players everywhere. He tries to get versatility in all types of players. You already see that happening by Razor also developing players like a Perifet at the back. Bringing in some new faces to create more versatility than just sticking to the same old guys. And as soon as they start getting the expansive type game that they both want to play, more directional and moving more forward and making those meters, sometimes you do feel just, I felt with the Springboks and even with the All Blacks, in the tackle, too quickly doing the offload. Sometimes just going to the ground, cleaning out for 1 or 2 phases, and then try and look for the offloads. Maybe just too much in a hurry to play just offload. Because you can play offload, and just play laterally over the field. But if you take the tackle sometimes 1 or 2 times, drive it, clean it, get the forwards involved, you get your structures back in place, and then start playing for offloads, then you're getting the mix right. So it's really just a forward backline type mix that both these teams got to get right. I do think they both can, and I think they both are going to this weekend. Guys, love rugby, love just the sport, love what's happening at the moment and the teams that play each other. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, one thing that I found really interesting is France beating Argentina like that, with basically new faces all over the field. Just shows you the depth at the moment in French rugby, that they can bring these guys up. And again, you'd be like, it's not major, putting all these new guys on. That should be a threat to the world. Because if they can bring on all these guys, if Galtier can bring in all these guys and they now start developing, he will also sit with a lot of depth in France. So, good signs for France. On the other side, Argentina seems to me like a team that's just on the decline. You've seen it from the World Cup. Yes, they made it quite high up to the playoffs, but it was to do with the pools. I have to say, it just looks like they are a bit on the decline if I look at the type of rugby that they played on the weekend. Wales was pretty impressive against Australia. I got to tell you that. Wales just always shows heart, sticking to the type of game they play. And I don't know why, but I would like to see Wales win one. Just because I don't think that those guys are not putting in everything that's on the field. A lot of young guys, they're putting up their hands. And there's some guys that I really like, and you can see there's going to be some good players come out there. For the Australians again, they're starting to really build again. Joe Smith knows what he's doing. I mean, Eddie Jones is no Joe Smith, and people can argue with me all they want. Eddie Jones is very good to hype up games and stuff. And look, Eddie has done well with Japanese rugby, but Eddie likes the expansive type running game. Joe Smith, I think, is going to complement Australian rugby more. Getting that mix right to also understand, you have to play a bit of a tighter game as well. You can't just be expansive all the time. where that's why you see kind of Japan, compliments Eddie Jones. But I'm going off here on the tangent, guys. Let's see what happens this weekend. I want to say Australia's going to win it again. I just feel Wales, it's a bit of a tough one for them to come to and think they're going to win on tour. I think Australia will improve. This week, I think Argentina will come back harder. I think Argentina is going to win their game. I don't know why. I'll go Argentina. I'll go Australia. I'll go All Blacks and Springboks for sure. And let's make it all Southern Hemisphere this week. I know a lot of people said that last week, but almost all the Southern Hemisphere did win, except of course for Argentina. It was kind of dismal. I think they will get a kicking up the to play better this week. Guys, thanks for watching my channel as always. If you enjoy these videos, hit the subscribe button, please. I'm trying to grow this channel all the time, and I'm going to catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.